Hi everyone, Alexandra Jowett here. Jupiter returns with your weekly astrology forecast for the week of November the 16th to the 22nd. And I'm giving a sort of a summary or like a title to the energy of this week that is embracing challenge. We are being sort of influenced by a range of different planets and the moon cycle, etc., to really do some personal work. And I believe that there's a huge amount of opportunity within that process that might not always be entirely comfortable or desirable, but the longer term rewards are something that I think that we all really would benefit from greatly, both as individuals and in terms of the collective. So without further ado, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to any new people that have come along. I'm glad you found me. So let's have a look at where we are. We're coming out of this new moon that we had here at the end of Scorpio. 23 degrees Scorpio, this new moon around about 6 a.m. Sunday morning here in the UK. This was taking place towards the end of the sign of Scorpio. Now, each of the signs is divided down into what astrologers call decans. So you will notice we have 12 signs in the zodiac, taking an equal portion of the 360-degree circle. That gives us a 30 degrees portion to each sign. And that 30 degrees can be subdivided down into 3 lots of 10. Hence decan, dec being 10. So we have the first decan, the second decan, and the third decan of each of the signs. Now, you may be familiar already with each of the signs having a ruler. So let's take our example here. This is Virgo, would be ruled by the planet Mercury. Each of the decans then has a sub-ruler. So it's another planetary influence. And it's signs like Scorpio, in fact, Scorpio in particular, that has so much complexity that we really can identify kind of subgroups within that group of what we might call Scorpios. So there's Scorpios are born in the first decan, second decan, third decan. It's usually, I've personally found it to be most distinct within the sign of Scorpio. Now, this third decan of Scorpio, where we had the new moon take place, that's sub-ruled by Venus, okay? Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, harmony, connecting, friendships, all of these nice things, the sweetness in life. And so there was that element to it. And of course, I've covered that, so I won't cover it in too much detail now. But Venus is going to be a really, really profound kind of player in the astrology of this week. And what we had present during that new moon, was an exact square from, so if we can consider Venus to be an important factor of this new moon, because of it ruling the third decan where it took place, we also had this square aspect, an exact square aspect at the time between Venus herself over there, strongly placed in her home sign of Libra, because she rules the sign of Libra. And in square to Pluto, Pluto being the ruler of the lunation because it's the ruler of Scorpio. So there was a real ton of this Pluto-Venus energy around, and that's still carrying over today and actually throughout the week, essentially. So what are these two archetypes then? When we're looking at Venus, we're really considering what it is that we love and value, what it is that brings pleasure and joy into our life. We're looking at the resources of our life, be that money is a big one with Venus. Food is another big one with Venus. But relationship is a real theme here because we're in the sign here of Libra, and Libra rules relationship. With Pluto energy like this, essentially Pluto will bring up to the surface that which has been buried. So anything that's really been pushed down, pushed away from, repressed, when it comes up like this in a connection with Venus, in the sign of Libra, this can really show up as issues around relationship and the relating style. Any issues that we've really, really pushed down and glossed over, perhaps to, for example, keep the peace, very much a Libran thing to do. Those things may have become intolerable, or the provocation of those feelings may have washed situations up to the surface where we have been burying something that is in conflict with what we truly want in our hearts. Okay, where have we perhaps sacrificed something of the truth of ourselves in order to get something that appears to be pleasing, appears to give us what we want on the surface? Libra being an air sign, it can be very much what's on the surface, what's sort of superficial. So things can appear very beautiful, very sweet, very harmonious, but Pluto's taking us, okay, what's going on underneath that? And of course, the new moon itself in Scorpio is really digging us into that stuff, as is Mercury right now, also in Scorpio. So that is an energy that's pulling through into Monday, into this week, sort of the backdrop, really. What have we kind of glossed over, and what can't we ignore anymore if we're going to be true and fair and come from a place of love and what it is that we truly value? So lots of those issues flying around. What I've written down here in preparation for today's session then is purging relationship issues, exposing conflicts in our values. So Pluto energy can twist things, it can manipulate things, it can try and control things. So it can be, where have we tried to control an aspect within ourselves or within our relationships, to get what we want, essentially, because Venus is about desires, it's about what I want to get. So how do we manipulate others and parts of ourselves in order to get what we want, even when it is in conflict with what we say we value? Okay, so where are these things where we've perhaps chosen to turn a blind eye to something that really, truly isn't in alignment with our value system? So, for example, I might have very strong views on let's say the environment, as an example, Venus being, about food. Well, where has it been perhaps that I have chosen to push that value system down, for example, because I just wanted a treat, or I wanted a lift, or, I just wanted to kind of have some kind of immediate pleasure in my life. So I might have made a not so great choice that's in conflict with my true values. So there can be like a prickling of the conscious that's really a guidance to say, is this really who you are? Is this really what you want to do? And Pluto's been such a power figure within 2020, that we'd be foolish not to pay attention, really, to the profound transformations that Pluto is attempting to bring within the structure of our lives, within the way that our system of life, of society is organized, and how we as Venus is a personal planet. So what's my personal contribution to this profound change and transformation that we're going through collectively? How does what I love and value play into that? And my behaviors, as a personal planet, Venus shows up as our behaviors. What are my behaviors around the use of my money, for example? So what are my spending habits? What am I spending my money on? Is that in alignment with how I want the transformation of society to look? How do I show up in connection with other people, whether that's a romantic relationship, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's your friends, your family, is how I'm showing up there, again, in alignment with the changes that need to be made. And this is pulling us back into the work that you may have done with the Venus retrograde that we've been through this year, that was really saying, what are the things you really value in life? Is it really that job that you go to every year that allows you to pay the bills and send your kids to school? Is that way of life really what you truly value? Or perhaps that opportunity through the crisis that we've had allowed you to just have a taste, Venus, a taste of a different way of doing things, perhaps working from home, perhaps being more involved in your children's education, perhaps being separated from people that you would ordinarily perhaps take for granted that they would always be a part of your life. All of these things have allowed us to consider what it is that we really love and value in our lives, and then make the transformations in the structure of our lives accordingly. So informed by those values. So it's another opportunity for us to just look at that situation. And it's a challenge. A square aspect is a challenge. It's going to involve an element of discomfort in that process. But if we can embrace that challenge, if we can just hold a little bit of space to sit with the discomfort and dig into that and go, well, discomfort is quite a profound feeling. It's a loud message that's trying to get our attention. So if we can just give it some of our attention and be with it, then there's a lot to be gained. So that's kind of the key thing, is we're pulling through that Venus-Pluto square. And then what's happening is, because Pluto and Jupiter are hanging out so close together at the moment, we're still in this energy of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction that really has been a major feature of 2020. As we move into Monday, today, the 16th, it's the Venus-Jupiter square that is just that little bit more profound within us. And this is kind of that challenge around, where my beliefs have been formed. What's the challenge? Are my beliefs, what I've aligned with in terms of philosophies, my personal philosophy, and politics. Jupiter is very much a political thing. Is that alignment that I perhaps have made, is that truly coming from a place of love and balance and harmony and justice? Libra is the scales of justice. Is this fair? And more about that later, because I think that's a really big deal as well. So again, how does this fit in with the beliefs and judgments we have aligned with throughout 2020? And how have our judgments, how have our beliefs been manipulated? Pluto, as I say, will twist and manipulate and try and control things. This Jupiter-Pluto conjunction really has been, I say, what's been behind this huge surge in conspiracy theories, because when we sense Pluto energy, we really pick up on something being manipulated. Something's being secret or hidden, or there's a distortion, there's a twisting, there's a darkness and a secretiveness. And so everybody's been hunting around to try and find what this hidden truth, Pluto-Jupiter, is. What's the hidden truth? We all have had this feeling that there's something else going on here that we're not quite sure of. And that space that's created, the space of not knowing, is something that Jupiter, in a hard aspect like this, isn't very comfortable with. Jupiter is the truth seeker. Jupiter wants to know, Jupiter wants to understand. Jupiter often, though, isn't very concerned with the detail, all right? He's not really concerned with the facts. He's not overly concerned with discrimination, and really knuckling down and drilling down into the core facts. It's kind of a glossing over. It's kind of a much higher level, taking all the little bits and making something sort of grander and somewhat more opaque in that process. So we've been, you know, under this influence, and it's been with Jupiter. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So this has really been a global phenomena, you know, the rise of this distrust of what we're being presented with, the situation that's around. And again, we're seeing that more profoundly in recent days and weeks because these two planets have come together again. So we need to start being honest with ourselves. You know, Pluto and Jupiter here is really saying, let's have a look at where we may have been manipulated or manipulated a part of ourselves in order to feel like we know, to feel like we understand, to feel like we have the truth, because that gives us a sense of control. You know, we don't like not being in control and saying, do you know what, I don't know. I don't know what all of this is about, and I can be comfortable with not knowing. That's not something many people can do. People will try and fill the gap of not knowing with an idea. Yes, that makes sense. Boom. I'd rather believe in something that perhaps maybe, you know, a little bit off, rather than just believing that, you know, I don't know. So we've got to examine that aspect of ourselves. What have we allowed into the space of not knowing? Because I really think that's the case, particularly with Jupiter being in the sign of Capricorn. Doesn't really give us the best side of Jupiter. It doesn't give us so much of the wisdom that we can have with Jupiter. And that's somewhat restricted by the contracting Saturn energy that's at play there. So how do we manipulate others? Sorry, no, that's the wrong, sorry, I've gone back to Monday there, forgive me. But yeah, how have our alignments and our judgments and our beliefs been potentially manipulated? So another aspect of Jupiter is abundance. It's our richness, if you like. Jupiter is the great benefic, and he gives us more and more and more. So when we have a challenge aspect here between the great benefic Jupiter and the lower benefic Venus, kind of probably all we really feel like doing is aligning with pleasure and fun, and escaping on holiday or having a party or just lazing around and indulging. It's a very indulgent kind of energy. So your discipline may have gone out of the window around yesterday and today and tomorrow, perhaps. You might have, you know, the diet might not be going so well, maybe, and you may just want to buy something. You may feel the urge to go on holiday. Jupiter is long distance travel, have a party, get together with people, all these things. And yeah, we can't do that at the moment. The square is saying, you know, we can't, this is restricted at the moment. So it's a perfect opportunity, therefore, to dig behind that desire, that impulse, and say, what is it? What is it about that would soothe me? What is it that I'm trying to soothe through indulging in that stuff? And also to develop a different way, a different resource. So Venus is our resources, and that's not just the material resources, that's the skills that we have within ourselves and within our relationship, Libra, to self. So how can I develop skills that will allow me to soothe myself in a more wise way, perhaps? There's a challenge there. How can I tap into perhaps some of the higher knowledge that I've engaged with in my journey through life that might give me a more healthy way of feeling comfort, which essentially is what Venus wants to bring in our lives. She wants to soften and sweeten our journey through life. So again, look for the opportunity there, where the opportunities to have those pleasures and joys in life have been restricted. That gives us a chance to develop a resource within ourselves to do that, to replace that with. And then we become less reliant, you know, on others. We become less reliant upon things going our way, being reliant upon perhaps something that's not quite as reliable as ourselves. You know, we're never not going to be with ourselves. So when we've developed skills and resources within ourselves, then they're always going to be there, no matter what is happening in the world around us that's outside of our control. So yeah, an increase in lazy and indulgent kind of feelings with this, not being super responsible or disciplined. So an increase in just, oh, sod it kind of energy. Excess in consumption, whether that be feeling a bit spendy, wanting to go on a bit of a shopping spree, or whether that be indulging in foods that perhaps aren't so healthy, drink, that kind of thing. And also, there's a deeper question here, as we are in Scorpio season with the Sun and Mercury here, the deeper question being around, how does my personal position of privilege in my life, in my situation in the world, or abundance, we could call it with Jupiter, how does that determine the values that I have? You know, am I fortunate that I have the opportunity to hold this belief because of my, perhaps my status, perhaps my age, perhaps the amount of money or other resources that I have? You know, I'm speaking to you from an incredibly privileged part of the world. You know, I'm speaking from the UK in 2020. I'm in the top tier of society that has safety and security. I have clean drinking water. I have abundant food. I'm warm. I'm safe. I've got access to medical care. I am massively, massively privileged compared to the vast majority of the population of this planet. And that affords me some of the righteousness that we can have with Jupiter, some of that self-righteousness and judgment. You know, we can look down our noses at other people who, say, for example, might not behave in accordance with our value system, but that's because they don't have our position of abundance. And so how do we square that circle in our lives, in the connectedness of our lives? This connection theme is going to be coming more and more strong, because we have the nodes of the moon right now, and they're going to be pulling us into eclipses very, very soon. And what we have happening, so we have the North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sagittarius. So these are the signs that are going to be experiencing the eclipses. Well, what they're doing at the moment is they're forming a square, and it's actually a T-square, because obviously the nodes of the moon are always in opposition to each other, to Neptune. Okay, Neptune, which will be preparing to station direct very soon as well. So an increasing influence there. This connection is tightening over the coming weeks as we approach the beginning of the calendar year of 2021. And this Neptune is, what is the familiar bond? What is the common bond of humanity? It's not the circumstances that we find ourselves in. It's those fundamental parts of what it is to be a human being, that we all need the same things. We all need access to the basics in life, to safety and shelter and food and love. You know, that's the thing. Everyone needs to feel loved and valued. That's another Venusian quality. We all need to feel like we are of some value to other people. We need that social bond. So the bigger picture, the common bonds of humanity, is something that we've got going on in the background as an increasing influence. And sort of that's how that's sort of filtering into some of these questions that we have coming up now. So alongside Mars stationing, Mars has stationed direct, but it's kind of like turning an oil tank around before we really see any forward momentum with Mars, but an increase in drive and energy and enthusiasm in our lives. Really, I mean, Mars is going to be hanging out at 15 degrees of Aries for some time. It's going to be a little while before we see the return of our mojo, as it were. So alongside that, this Jupiter-Venus thing doesn't lend itself really very well to doing much work, getting a lot of work done today. So, you know, if you're feeling like taking it easy, then perhaps just at least give some consideration to some of these ideas that I've floated in you, and just see if you can utilize that square aspect to master something within your own experience of life. So as we move into Tuesday, the 17th of November, we are pulling into the third and final for now aspect between Uranus, the Great Awakener, Uranus down here in Venus-ruled Taurus, and Mercury over there in Pluto and Mars-ruled Scorpio. So you can see again how this Venus-Pluto theme is continuing. With Uranus and Mercury, what we have here is a situation which could give rise to surprising and shocking information. All right, Mercury is information, data, details, and Uranus is the explosive. It's very destabilizing and shaking kind of energy. So we really have the potential here in the middle part of the week for shocking news or shocking information in some way. You may get some kind of communication that takes you by surprise in some way, perhaps in a way that you didn't expect. But also, you know, this is the third time that we've had this aspect because of the retrograde of Mercury. Mercury is still in shadow. So the other occasions, and you might be able to see a theme show up here. So the other occasions that we've had of this energy were, this first took place on October the 8th, when Mercury was direct. Then the retrograde was October the 19th. And so now we're having the third and final dose of this energy. So think back to those dates, or if you use a journal, have a look, see what you recorded, and just see, are there any themes here? Because this combination of energies, and particularly with Mercury and Scorpio, can lead to quite a breakthrough in our understanding. This is the energy of epiphanies. So it can be where we've done some self-inquiry with, you know, Scorpio energy, with Pluto, and particularly around this Venus stuff, because that's the ruler of Uranus at the moment. This could be a real breakthrough in our understanding, a real flashpoint, a penny drop moment where it's like, oh yeah, I get it. I get what I've been doing. I get what's behind things, the way that I behave, the way that I show up, perhaps in relationship, or in connection with other people, or in connection to my values and my resources. So that could be a real benefit that we might see with this energy. Or it may just, as I say, just show up as some shocking or unexpected information or communication with someone. There could be, we might witness a breakthrough in anything to do with the field of travel, particularly space travel here with the Uranus kind of influence. It could be, you know, Uranus is a sign of progressiveness. It's really cutting edge, like the latest stuff. So, you know, breakthroughs in travel, in communication, fit in the field of communication, and also within the field of health. Mercury rules healing and health. So we might see, perhaps a breakthrough in developments with the treatment, for example, of the coronavirus or any other health issues for that matter as well. Or a breakthrough in understanding something about perhaps what lay behind, something that was previously unseen with regards to a health or healing matter. So again, it is an opposition, so that might be in some way challenging, but again, it's a very powerful energy. It's a very provocative and kind of unavoidable energy in some way. I would urge caution around getting into any kind of important negotiation at this time. I can't imagine that would be too stable or grounded, which is important, I think, in any kind of communication, essentially, is that we're coming from a place of groundedness. Again, not a great time for signing any contracts or making any kind of formal agreements or agreements that you want to be stable and enduring and lasting, because Uranus energy here really is erratic. It's very, very changeable energy. So it's not very stable. And you may also, if you're sensitive to these kinds of energies, you may find on the days surrounding this, you are feeling a little bit more agitated or, nervy or anxious. Those are the kinds of feelings that we can experience here. Perhaps an increase in palpitations, Uranus here in Taurus being ruled by Venus is the heart. So, those skipped heartbeats or just a faster beating heart, that kind of nervous palpitation type of energy. So we can feel frantic, scattered, busy, changeable, so not really very focused energy. So if you have a task that you would like to do that needs more focus, this probably isn't really the day to be doing that. Tuesday, Wednesday, I would just avoid that. There can be a volatility with Uranus in conversations with other people. This is also financial. Taurus, Venus connection and Scorpio, this axis does deal with finances. So we may experience some shocks and surprises or bumps in terms of stock markets, personal investments, exchange rates, all those kinds of things that really can be destabilized by this energy. So watch out for that. And you may find that a conversation or an interaction or a communication or something that you read or hear plunges you into something. With Scorpio here, it's like plunging you into something that has been played down or repressed or suppressed in some way. It can be the simmering backdrop, perhaps, in a relationship that you might have, let's say, and then you, boom, all of a sudden find yourself, oh, we're doing that, are we? Okay, we're going there. Okay, right. It's that kind of energy. It's just going to hurtle you back into something sort of way more deep and behind, something that lays behind something unseen, or something that's intentionally been something that we don't kind of discuss, or we don't want to go there. Scorpio is the sign of the taboo, and there can be those taboo subjects in relationships with people that we don't talk about that, and we might find ourselves just immediately thrown back into that light. Wednesday and Thursday, then I think that energy is going to carry over into Wednesday, but then the key energy as we're moving into Wednesday and Thursday is going to be, now that Venus has moved a little way forward, she's moved away from the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and really now we're starting to see her connecting through this square challenge aspect with Saturn. This, I suspect, is what we're going to feel the most. We're going to be kind of tuned into this a little bit more. Part of the reason is that by then the moon, so don't forget the moon is now waxing, she's growing because she's moving away from the new moon. The moon on Thursday will be on top of Saturn. So that's going to be washing up to the surface this situation and emphasizing it that bit more. Okay, so as we'll feel this building through Wednesday, and then as we go into Thursday, I think that it's going to be quite a common, it's going to be the dominant kind of feel that's out there. So what are we looking at here? Well, we are looking at with Saturn is a cold energy. So Saturn, where we've had Jupiter expanding things, Saturn does the opposite. It contracts, all right? This is a restrictive energy. It's a blockage in some way because it creates boundaries and barriers and, you know, things that are very, very solid. So when we have that energy in connection with Venus, we can feel a restriction to love. We can feel a restriction and a cold hardness in terms of our sense of worth. Venus is how it's our self-esteem. It's how we feel about ourselves. So we can really feel like we're not worthy, like we're not worthy of love. We're not worthy of pleasure, or we can just feel the sadness due to the loss of pleasure that there is in our lives right now. You know, it's the social life, I think, right now that's been impacted the most. Certainly the arts. You know, there isn't the music, there isn't the social occasions, there isn't the dancing, there isn't, you know, the joy and happiness in our lives. And this could be a day when we're really, really feeling that quite profoundly on a personal level. It's also an isolating kind of feeling with Saturn in aspect to Venus like this. It's loneliness and isolation. And don't forget, you know, if you're watching this, we've immediately changed just by bringing this piece of information into your consciousness has changed the outcome of it just by knowing it. But there's so many people out there who aren't going to be conscious that they're under this influence. They're just going to get swept up in the feelings, moon, on that day of feeling very isolated, unloved, uncared about, that there's, you know, there's no joy and pleasure in their life. And that can lead to some really heavy situations. So for those of us who are conscious of this energy, let's make sure that we're reaching out to people that are out there that may be, you know, really coming a cropper because of these feels. You know, the people out there that might be isolated, that might be, you know, more inclined to feeling lonely and depressed and unloved. You know, let's reach out to them and compensate for some of this stuff that's going to be a wash out there if we can. Channel that into connecting and bringing, you know, being a force for good. Saturn is where we can have influence. It can be where we, you know, do our work. So let's channel some of that effort of Saturn into bringing a little bit more love to those who might not be feeling it. This can also be difficulties in terms of connecting with women. Challenges, let's say challenges with relating, with relationships, with where we might feel burdened by our relationship or by our responsibilities to those that we love and care about. It can really feel like that's got on top of us in these days. It can feel like, oh God, you know, I have this real burden to you know, show up for the people that I love in my life and that I take care of. It can be an exacerbation of financial burdens. Saturn, Venus there. So perhaps, you know, really feeling quite profoundly, any lack of funds and other resources that you might have right now. Again, those are the feelings that are be coming up to the surface. Fear is a big deal with Saturn, and people that carry this in their natal chart, so this hard aspect of square between Saturn and Venus, can often feel fear around relationships. It can feel like something's going to be taken away. That contracting essence of Saturn can make it feel like, I don't want to love, I don't want to connect, I don't want to open up my heart. I need to build a wall of protection around it because, that loss, there's a loss and a lack kind of essence with Saturn. So that can show up as, if I open my heart, I'm opening myself up to the loss and lack or danger in some way. Or I myself might become a burden. Saturn, Venus, like, I don't want to be a burden to someone else. So again, issues around being a burden might be something that comes up to the surface at this time as well. So, I've lost my job. I'm therefore a burden to my husband or my wife or my family. Or, my health isn't where I'd like it to be. I'm just a nuisance. I just caused this person a hardship. Through the fact that we're in a relationship together. Those kinds of things, lots of themes. So watch out for those showing up and see if there's a way that you can work with that. It will pass over fairly quickly. So, you may choose to just ignore it. But at the same time, what we have present is a sextile aspect from the Sun in Scorpio, who's getting underneath, who's getting behind things, who is ruled by Venus or sub-ruled by Venus at this time because the Sun is in that last decan of Scorpio. This sextile says, there's opportunity. If you put in a little bit of effort here, that effort will be rewarded. You'll see some real benefits from doing some work with this energy. So whether that's a case of you reaching out to offer comfort to someone else, that will create some positive results. Or whether it's, looking at where some of these feelings are showing up in your own relationships, that work will really give you some lasting results. Saturn endures. Saturn is tenacious. Saturn is Chronos, the Lord of Time. This will give lasting results with Saturn. And yeah, fear. Gosh, so much fear around right now. How much of our alignments, Venus is what connects. Venus is the copper wire that brings two things together and connects them. So she's all about making connections with things that we find loving, find pleasurable, or that we align with from our own personal values. So she's making these alignments. And this is going to be a challenge around where fear shows up in that picture, either by stopping you getting what you value, or being a part of directing and bossing you around. Where has fear shown up in terms of how you formulated your connections and alliances and allegiances at this time? Have I chosen to align myself with something or connect to something through fear? Fear of what might happen if I don't, or fear of whatever. Let's just consider fear in that realm, because there's so much of that around right now. We're being asked to take responsibility for our relationship with love, with pleasure, with connection, and with resources. So yeah, where we've identified where feelings of lack, feelings of fear, that kind of thing are showing up, we are put in a position where it's like, it's on you now. You have to take responsibility for this. So say I have been heartbroken in the past, and I now have built this wall around me to protect me from ever having that pain again. So this is fear. Am I therefore isolating myself? Does that wall also keep any other love or pleasure from getting in? Do I push love away from me in order to protect myself, for example? That's the kind of energy that we need to look at and say, okay, is there a different way that I could do this? Because this is all about mastery with a square aspect, and particularly with Saturn, it's saying, is that how you want to be, like till the end of time, like never experiencing love because you're afraid of what might happen based on something that happened in the past? Saturn is time, it's the linear form of time, or our concept of time in its linear form. Important stuff to consider. There is a harshness, there is a coldness that comes with fear, and this is where cruelty can turn up. Fear is so motivating. There's two ways to motivate people. There's the carrot and the stick. And I've witnessed time and time and again in life, there's only so much dangling a carrot can do. Human beings tend to be more motivated, it seems, by the stick, by things getting hard, by things getting tough and beating us up in some way. That seems to be a more profound lesson that we learn when something hurts. But there's a harshness, there's a cruelty involved, where we have sacrificed something of the truth of our own values through fear here. So harshness that comes with fear, cruelty appears due to the lack of warmth, difficulties with women. Now, the perfect example of this, I've been giving a lot of thought lately with this Jupiter-Pluto conjunction here. My mind keeps going back to the medieval times and the witch hunts that we had there. There was an idea that was put out at the time, that was published, let's say, and in fact it very much was published, because this was around the time actually that the printing press was first created. And you might say that as this Uranus Mercury kind of energy, like this amazing invention that made communication with people so much easier. But immediately that was used to create propaganda. Now we can make the exact comparison to where we find ourselves today with social media. What do we believe? What do we trust in? What information can we say is completely true? And this has been an argument that goes right back to those times of when the printing press was first created, and anyone that was rich enough to publish something, to actually use this, to create these pamphlets that used to just be handed out on the street. So the first kind of social media, essentially, it was used for propaganda. And I can't help but make these comparisons. Now, what happened as a result of that was the witch trials, women, Venus, being burned at the stake because there was this deep fear, Saturn. And the fear was that the wisdom, Jupiter, the wisdom that these women had, for example, they might have been herbalists or medicine practitioners in some way, which wouldn't have been allowed for women. That this knowledge, this wisdom that they had was somehow Pluto in league with the devil. So here we've gone back into the conspiracy theory territory of, oh my goodness, this isn't right. There's definitely something fishy and dodgy about this. And then filling in that gap with, they must be in league with the devil. It must be something very, very dodgy. And therefore the only thing to do then is to be cruel and harsh and act from fear and literally kill a whole bunch of women. And one of the people who was a figurehead of making this happen, certainly here in this part of the world, was King James. And it was a personal experience that he had, and he himself has Saturn square Venus in his birth chart. That kind of cruel, harsh, or what can appear as a cruel harshness and a fear of women, or of the feminine. And yeah, he was one of these guys who literally thought that these women were in league with the devil. They had these magical powers, or powers that were beyond his knowing, that tapped them into a higher realm, perhaps. And it was so frightening to him. It was such an attack on his sense of Saturn. He was a king, that he had to make this stop, and perpetrated horrific crimes as a consequence of his own fear of that these women were actually in league against him and were personally going to attack him and try and throw him from his position of power. And I just can't help but see a mirroring of what's going on in today's society. There is a witch hunt going on, because there are a few members of our society that do have vast wealth. I'm thinking specifically here with the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction of Bill Gates. He has this signature in his chart. It's very typical with people who have a huge amount of influence and power and money. This is the billionaires conjunction, or millionaires conjunction. And there it comes with that inherent sense of, that's suspicious. How should someone have that amount of power? And our suspicion can soon be hijacked by our fear, Saturn. So this really is an opportunity, both in our personal lives and in the bigger scheme of things, just to have a look at where is fear conducting the connections that we make, the alignments and allegiances that we make, the values that we hold, or that we're aligning with. What are the things that we're happy to sort of gloss over, and pretend and repress and push down, this Scorpio energy. So yeah, just some interesting things that I'm seeing mirroring today's society. I'm pretty sure, I've got to say, it's not very pleasant, but I've got to say, if we were in medieval times now, there's a few people out there in society who would have been hung, drawn and quartered by now, just by popular belief that they're in league with the devil. Essentially, that's it. So, it's really, what I see going on social media is not much different to what was going on in medieval times. And surely we're beyond that now. It might not be quite as, immediately violent, but I think the same energy is behind this. And we have a choice point. We're at a choice point. Saturn and Jupiter are drawing to an end. They're bringing to a close now their cycle with each other, ready to start something new. So this is really the time of looking at these things, identifying these things, and saying, do you know what, I can let go and release this now. I don't need to be showing up this way in what I align with and what my values are. So as always, I hope that's helpful. I think, oh no, I've not quite finished. I beg your pardon. On Friday, so that's going to be pretty intense as we move through that energy. On Friday, the moon's going to move into Aquarius, which does give us a bit of a lift and facilitate, a bit more objectivity coming into the situation, a little bit more rationality. And then as we move through the weekend, we have Venus now is, she's finished the journey through Libra, and she's going to move into Scorpio. She doesn't do quite so well in Scorpio, but again, this is going to be able to facilitate us really getting in deep with our values and our relationship and making a transformation. The energy of the weekend really is all about change and transformation. We've got Venus going into the sign of death and rebirth, Scorpio. We've also got the sun moving into Sagittarius. Sagittarius is focused on the future. That arrow is pointing, upwards and outwards. It's aligned with the horizon. It wants to pull us into the future. And it's a mutable sign. So it's, you know, the mutable signs are all about change. So we've got another dose of change going on there. And then we'll also have the moon moving into Pisces. Now, Pisces, again, is a mutable sign. It's a sign of change, and it's a sign of endings. It's the last sign of the zodiac. So bringing things to a close, making the transformations and the changes that are necessary. And that will be provoked on Sunday by the first quarter square aspect of the moon. So the intentions, the seeds we've planted at the new moon, what do I want to bring about in my life wherever Scorpio is in my chart? That's what that's what we align with at the new moon. This is the point in that where there's a challenge, there's a hurdle in terms of bringing that into being, bringing that into manifestation. So for example, as an example, let's just say the new moon in Scorpio was in my 7th house of relationships, and I really want to transform how I show up in relationship so that it's not coming from a place of fear anymore. It's coming from a place of love. All right, say that that's the situation. We might then see here a challenge around actually being able to make that happen in reality. There might be a real test, you know, as the universe kind of throws down the gauntlet in front of them and says, okay, if you really want this, if you really want to bring this into being in your life, show me how much. You know, I'm not going to make it easy for you. It's a problem-solving energy. It's going to push you to kind of get around something. And you'll only do that if you really, really mean it. If you really, really want that, and you've really got your focus set on it, and you're determined to achieve what it is that you've set out to achieve. So look out for a bit of a wobble, look out for a test or a challenge around manifesting what it is that you want to manifest from the new moon in Scorpio. And then we're moving into our the first eclipse of this winter, you know, as a result of that. So the universe will kind of take the reins from us a little bit, really. Change, transformation, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope that's been helpful for you. Some of the themes that I've discussed there are quite big, but like I say, this is a very opportune moment. There's a real with the sextile from the sun this week to everything that Venus is doing in square to these guys, you know, there's a real opportunity, if we do a bit of work there, to move our own self-development on in leaps and bounds. So best of luck with that. Drop me a comment if this is helpful, or if you find yourself somewhere along that journey and you'd like to share that with others. I really would strongly urge everyone within my little community that I'm creating here to connect with each other and to assist each other and to help each other out, even if that is just by sharing your own experiences. And as always, if what I do gives some value to you, if it speaks to your heart in some way, if it adds something beneficial to your life, please support the work that I do for free by just clicking like, love, share, and definitely subscribing to my channel. That helps it to reach other people. And I will be here next Monday with your next weekly astrology forecast. Until then, lots of love and bye for now.